Leviathan is one heck of a roller coaster. Its speed, airtime, and laterals are insane and are enough to make it the best roller coaster in Canada. In today's review, I'm going to be going in depth of how Leviathan ranks for me and the best and worst aspects of the ride. So, let's dive into it. Let's start off with the stats, like always. Leviathan was the first B&M Giga Coaster and it opened on May 6th, 2012 for $28 million. It has both a height and drop height of 306 feet. It goes 92 miles per hour and is 5,486 feet long with a duration of 3 minutes and 28 seconds. Its first drop is 80 degrees steep and the ride has a total of 32 riders per train. Those were the quick and easy stats. Now let's get into the layout. When you're dispatched, you take a slow right turn into the lift hill. You then ascend the 306 foot tall lift hill at a steady pace. You then dive down into a tunnel which serves as the first drop. Like always, the B&M Giga Drops give great floater airtime and it has a relatively long duration. You then rise into a banked turn, which is nothing too great, but is about the same as Fury's first turn. You then rise into the best element of the entire ride for me, the speed hill. The speed hill gives great flowjector airtime, but then at the last second you bank to the left really sharply and quickly. It provides great laterals and definitely makes it the best element on the ride for me. Then there is a large camelback that is sadly trimmed, but still gives mild, but still decent floater airtime. It definitely wasn't the standout element, but it was also the weakest moment of airtime on the ride. You then go into a weirdly profiled turnaround, which honestly looks like some of my failed Planet Coaster recreations. Then you go into a banked turn that reminds me of Fury 325's quick snaps. You are still taking it at a slower speed, so it didn't give as great of laterals like Fury 325, but it still gave decent forces. Then you go into yet again another trimmed airtime hill. If it weren't for the trims on this thing, it could easily become better than Orion. Once again, it gives mild airtime, but stronger than the first camelback. If it wasn't trimmed, I am sure that it would have given great airtime. You then rise into another banked turn that is very similar to the previous ones on the ride. The point of this element is most likely to slow the train down, and while yes, it does do that well, it's also a fun element that gives good laterals. You then rise into the most comical brake run of all time. Enthusiasts who've been to the park weren't kidding when they say that it's just as tall as Dragonfire, the park's aero looper. And that concludes your ride on Leviathan. First, let's talk about the cons of Leviathan. Thankfully, there aren't many. First off, the inability to pick your row. You probably are allowed to most days, but the 2 days that I went to the park, it was pretty busy, at least in my standards from park visits, so every single time that I tried to request front or back row, the operators would say, "Sure, go ahead to row 3, or, "Yeah, of course, row 7 please." It was probably just a misunderstanding on our part, but I sadly walked away without any front or back row rides on Leviathan. Another downside is one that's good, but also bad. Canada's Wonderland is easily the premier park for all Canadians, and the biggest and baddest roller coaster there is Leviathan. So flocks of people flee to the ride. So unless you have a fast lane, which I thankfully did one of those days, you will most definitely be waiting a long time for a ride, no matter the circumstance. Not kidding, my second day at the park was a downpour early in the day, and it did not let up until about 12 to 1 p.m., but the wait for Leviathan was still at least an hour and a half long. A smaller con is the fact that the ride has little to no theming. The entry plaza is awesome, the logo looks great, but other than that, there's nothing. Finally, the ride can get a little rattly in some places, but that's to be expected, as many B&M hypers and even Fury 325 can be on a little shaky side in some moments. But this was mostly glass smooth. There are only a few valleys that shook me up a little bit. So those were the major cons that I saw and experienced on my trip. But now let's get positive. Literally. This ride is very intense, making the positive G's in some of the valleys very insane. But not just that, the negative G's were even better. The airtime on this ride doesn't miss, even on the trimmed airtime hills. They may be mild, but still give great floater, especially on the speed hill, which I mentioned earlier. Another great aspect of the ride is the operations. No, they didn't let me pick my row, but they were eager, fast, and efficient. A girl sitting next to me on one of the rides wanted her restraint super tight, and the op was completely fine with it, and he helped to ensure that. Overall, this ride has almost no major flaws and is easily one of the best roller coasters that I've ridden. So I'm giving this ride a final score of 9.5 out of 10. As of July 2023, this ride sits comfortably at my 8th spot overall, just above Millennium Force and right below Mystic Timbers. This is easily one of the best roller coasters I've ridden, and I would absolutely love to go back someday to get more rides on this monster of an attraction. So that's about all for this video. If you've ridden Leviathan, what are your thoughts on it? If not, where do you think it will rank for you? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.